At my parents' 30th anniversary, a hidden family secret is revealed that shocks me and my daughter Sophie. A photograph and long-buried betrayals expose the truth behind the life I thought I knew. I must face reality, protect the truth, and safeguard my daughter's future. The words sliced through me, sharper than any knife. I felt the heat rise in my chest, that old familiar humiliation tightening around my throat. My fork trembled in my hand. Normally, I would have bowed my head, laughed it off, let the moment pass. But something inside me refused this time. Something deep, raw, and long suppressed clawed its way to the surface. I put down my fork slowly. I looked straight at her, really looked at her, at the woman who raised me, who taught me to believe I was less than. And before I could second-guess myself, before the fear of her judgment could clamp down on my tongue, I spoke the words that had been waiting a lifetime to be said. Maybe the reason I'll never be as good as Clarissa is because you never wanted me to be. The silence that followed was deafening. Forks froze mid-air. Glasses hovered. Clarissa's smirk faltered for the first time I could remember, and my mother, my unshakable, domineering mother, stared at me as if I had slapped her across the face. In that moment, the entire air shifted. I could feel decades of swallowed pain pressing against the surface, demanding release. And I knew this was only the beginning of what needed to be said. Her eyes hardened almost immediately, like shutters slamming closed. I knew that look. It was the one she used when she was cornered, when her authority was being questioned. Her lips curled into that familiar sneer, the same one I had seen since I was a child. "What nonsense," she said coldly, shaking her head. "Don't be ridiculous, Daniela. You've always been dramatic. I treated you exactly the same as your sister. If you failed, that's on you." The words should have cut me down the way they always did, but they didn't, not this time. Something inside me had already shifted. The fire that had sparked in my chest didn't die at her dismissal. It roared louder. I leaned forward, my voice steady though my hands trembled under the table. "No, you didn't treat us the same. You made sure Clarissa had every chance, every ounce of encouragement, while I was left fighting for scraps of attention. You made me believe I was never enough. That's not being dramatic, Mom. That's the truth." The silence thickened. Clarissa shifted uncomfortably beside her wine glass. My father, who had been the quiet bystander in our family wars, stared down at his plate, pretending the tension wasn't suffocating the room. Mom scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "You're rewriting history. I gave you both the same opportunities. You just never had the discipline or the ambition. Clarissa worked hard. That's why she's successful. Maybe instead of blaming me, you should take responsibility." Her words were cruel, but this time they fueled me. For 36 years, I had let her define me, diminish me, box me into a corner I could never climb out of. And suddenly, I couldn't bear it anymore. "You want to talk about responsibility?" I said, my voice cracking but louder now. "Fine. Let's talk about how you used to read Clarissa bedtime stories while telling me I was too old, even though I was 2 years younger. Let's talk about how you paid for her piano lessons but told me it wasn't worth the money because I wasn't talented enough. Let's talk about how you bragged about her at church and never once mentioned my name. That's not my lack of ambition, Mom. That's favoritism. That's cruelty." Her face flushed red, whether from embarrassment or rage. I couldn't tell. She opened her mouth to retort, but before she could, Clarissa jumped in.
"Daniela, stop exaggerating. You've always been sensitive. Mom pushed you because she wanted you to do better. You just never tried as hard as I did. That was it. The match to the gasoline. The years of biting my tongue, of swallowing grief, of letting them define my reality. It all erupted. You don't get to tell me what I lived, Clarissa." I snapped, turning on her with a ferocity I didn't know I had. "You don't get to rewrite my pain just because you were too busy basking in it. You had Mom's love, her support, her pride."
"You had everything. And I had nothing but her voice telling me I'd never be enough. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To grow up believing you are second best in your own family?" For the first time, Clarissa looked at me without that smug superiority. She looked unsettled. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no clever comeback. The room was heavy with the truth I had finally unleashed. My father still said nothing, frozen in his cowardice. Mom looked away, her jaw clenched, as if refusing to give me the satisfaction of her acknowledgement. But I had said it. I had ripped open the wound I had hidden for so long and forced them all to look at it. The night didn't end with apologies. It didn't end with hugs or sudden realizations of love. No, it ended with Mom standing up stiffly, announcing that dinner was over and walking away. Clarissa followed her, silent for once. My father mumbled something about needing to check his emails and disappeared into his study. And I sat there alone at the table, the remnants of dinner still on my plate, my hands trembling. For the first time, I felt both utterly broken and strangely free, because even though nothing had been resolved, I had spoken. I had said the words I'd been burying my entire life. But what I didn't know that night, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the cracks I had forced open would eventually split into an earthquake. That dinner was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the silence was deafening. My phone didn't ring. No texts from my mother. No smug little check-ins from Clarissa. The family group chat, which usually buzzed with Mom's updates about Clarissa's life, holiday plans, and trivial gossip, went quiet. For a while, I thought maybe they were just letting things cool down, that maybe we'd circle back with clearer heads. But deep down, I knew better. That dinner had shaken something loose that my mother couldn't control. And if there was one thing she hated, it was losing control of the narrative. Then, about a week later, it started. Whispered rumors. A family friend reached out hesitantly to let me know that Mom had been talking about me, painting me as unstable, jealous, even unwell. Clarissa, apparently, had echoed those words, sighing that she wished I could just be happy for her success instead of inventing drama. I shouldn't have been surprised. That was their pattern. Gaslight, deflect, turn me into the villain so they didn't have to face their own cruelty. But hearing it still pierced me like a blade. It was one thing to be diminished behind closed doors. It was another to have my name dragged through the community, my pain twisted into a caricature for others to pity or mock. I spent nights lying awake, torn between anger and despair. Part of me wanted to retreat again, to slip back into silence so they would leave me alone. But another part, the part that had finally spoken at that dinner table, knew I couldn't go back. Not now, not after everything I had admitted to myself. And then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. One evening, I got an unexpected message on Facebook from an old neighbor, Mrs. Keller. She was in her 70s now, but she had known our family since I was little. Her message was short, but it made my hands shake as I read it. Daniela, I just want you to know, I always saw how differently your mother treated you and Clarissa. You weren't imagining it. You deserved better. I stared at those words, tears spilling down my face. For so long, I had wondered if it was just me. If maybe I had exaggerated things, if maybe my mother was right and I was just too sensitive. But here was someone outside of us, someone who had watched, who confirmed that it had been real, that I wasn't crazy. It was both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it confirmed the neglect wasn't just in my head. Liberating because it meant I had the right to my truth. And with that validation, something in me hardened. I decided I wasn't going to let my mother or Clarissa control the story anymore. If they wanted to spread lies about me, I would fight back. Not with more lies, but with the truth they had tried to bury for decades. I started writing. Pages and pages of memories, moments I had tucked away, incidents I had been too ashamed or scared to share. The birthday party where Mom only invited Clarissa's friends and told me I could tag along. The Christmas when all the expensive gifts were stacked under the tree for my sister while I got socks. The summer camp I begged to attend but was told we couldn't afford it until Clarissa got to go the next year. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. This wasn't just childhood hurt. This was a pattern of erasure, a lifelong campaign to keep me small. And I realized something else too. My father's silence had been just as damaging. He had watched it happen. He had let it happen. And his refusal to defend me had taught me, again and again, that my pain wasn't worth standing up for. It made me furious, but it also made me determined. I decided the next family gathering. I didn't care if it was awkward. I didn't care if they hated me. I was going to put it all on the table. Not in anger, not just in the heat of the moment, but deliberately, with the clarity I had gained. I was going to force them to hear me, and that chance came sooner than I expected. My cousin announced she was hosting a big family barbecue, and everyone would be there. Mom, Dad, Clarissa, the aunts and uncles, even the cousins who had once looked up to me before Mom made sure they only heard about how difficult I was. The night before, I lay in bed rehearsing my words, my chest tight with both fear and resolve. I knew this wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclaiming myself, about no longer letting their version of me define my reality. But I also knew family secrets have a way of spilling out once the surface is cracked. And what came out at that barbecue would prove to be far darker than I ever imagined. The barbecue started like all family gatherings did. Laughter, chatter, the smell of grilled food, the clinking of glasses. People hugged and greeted one another, but when I walked in, the air shifted. Conversations dipped, smiles turned tight. I could feel the weight of their stares on me, whispers barely concealed. I knew why. Mom had gotten to them first. She always did. I almost turned around and left right then. The familiar ache of being unwanted rose in my throat, but I forced myself to stay. Not this time. Not again. I wasn't going to vanish into the background. I found a seat at the long picnic table across from Mom and Clarissa. Mom wore her usual mask of superiority, her lips curved in that slight smile that never reached her eyes. Clarissa looked polished, perfect as always, but I noticed the faint tension in her jaw when our eyes met. For a while, I stayed quiet, letting the conversation swirl around me. But then, like fate, one of my uncles asked the question that cracked the door wide open.
So, Clarissa, your mom tells us you're up for another promotion. That's wonderful. And what about you, Daniela? What are you working on these days? The table went silent. All eyes turned to me, waiting for the usual awkward shrug, the fumbling answer that made me look small next to my sister.
I could feel Mom watching, almost daring me to fail again. But instead of shrinking, I drew in a breath and spoke clearly. I've been working on myself, on understanding the truth about this family, on writing down all the ways I was treated differently from the moment I was born. The effect was immediate. Forks clattered, a few cousins exchanged uneasy glances. Clarissa's face paled, and Mom stiffened, her hand tightening around her glass. "What are you talking about?" she asked sharply, her voice carrying that dangerous edge I knew so well. I looked her straight in the eye. "I'm talking about how you spent my whole life making sure I believed I was less than Clarissa. I'm talking about the favoritism, the neglect, the way you paraded her achievements while ignoring mine. I'm talking about how you broke me down so badly I thought I didn't deserve love or success. And I'm done pretending it didn't happen." A stunned silence followed. Some of the younger cousins looked confused, but the older relatives, I saw recognition in their faces. They remembered. They knew. One of my aunts spoke hesitantly. "Well, I did notice your mother bragged more about Clarissa." Mom cut her off with a sharp glare. "This is absurd," she snapped. "Daniela has always been bitter, always twisting things. Don't listen to her lies." But then Mrs. Keller, our old neighbor, who had been invited as she often was to these gatherings, spoke up from the end of the table. Her voice was gentle but firm. "It's not lies," she said. "I saw it too. Everyone saw it. Daniela was treated differently. It was obvious." Gasps rippled through the group. Mom's face went rigid, her composure cracking. Clarissa shifted uncomfortably, her perfect mask faltering. For the first time, it wasn't just my word against theirs. Someone else was naming the truth. And then, before Mom could spit out another denial, another voice chimed in. My father's. "I saw it too." The entire table turned to him. He looked older than I remembered, tired, guilt etched deep into his features. His voice shook, but he didn't look away. I should have done something. I should have spoken up, but I didn't. I let it happen. It was like the ground split beneath us. My chest tightened, years of rage and grief colliding all at once. I wanted to scream at him, to ask why he had let me suffer in silence, why he had chosen cowardice over his own daughter. But before I could, Mom exploded. "You don't know what you're talking about," she shouted, her voice shrill now. "Daniela has always been weak, always blaming others for her failures. I pushed her because she needed it. I wasn't going to coddle her like some pathetic, 'Enough!' My voice cut through hers, louder than I'd ever heard it. My hands trembled, but my voice did not. You don't get to call me weak anymore. I survived you. I survived growing up believing I was worthless because of the way you treated me. But I am not worthless. I am not less than, and I will not let you erase me any longer." The table was dead silent. The words hung heavy in the summer air. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't apologizing. I was standing fully in my truth. But just when I thought the confrontation had reached its peak, my father let out a broken sigh and whispered something that shattered the entire family wide open. "She treated you differently because you're not her favorite. You're her shame." The world seemed to tilt. My breath caught in my throat. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He looked at me with haunted eyes, tears welling. "Because, Daniela, you're not just the forgotten daughter. You're the daughter she never wanted anyone to know the truth about." The table erupted in confusion, voices overlapping. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear. All I knew was that my father had just opened a door I hadn't even known existed. A door that hid secrets darker than the neglect I'd carried all my life. The world seemed to slow, every sound muffled except for the ringing in my ears. My father's words spun inside my head like a storm I couldn't grasp. Her shame? The truth about me? I stared at him, my chest tightening, my throat dry. What do you mean? My voice cracked, barely above a whisper, but the weight of it made the table fall silent again. Every face was turned toward him. Even my mother, usually so quick to seize control, looked stricken, her hand trembling around her glass of wine. Dad swallowed hard, his shoulders sagging as if he carried a burden too heavy to hold anymore. I should have told you years ago. I should have fought for you, but your mother made me swear never to speak of it. I thought I was protecting the family, but I see now I was just protecting her. Mom's voice cut in, sharp and frantic. Stop it, Sherwin. Don't you dare. But he didn't stop. He looked straight at me, his eyes filled with a sorrow I had never seen before. Daniela, you weren't a mistake. You were a secret. Your mother, she was having an affair when you were conceived. Gasps rippled through the table. My vision blurred as if the ground had fallen away. An affair, a secret. My entire body went cold. What? My voice came out hoarse. He nodded, tears streaking his face now. I knew you weren't mine the moment I saw you, but I loved you anyway. I tried. God, I tried. But your mother, she couldn't bear to look at you without being reminded. That's why she favored Clarissa. That's why she treated you the way she did, because to her, you were a constant reminder of her betrayal. The air in my lungs collapsed. My chest burned, my hands numb. I turned to Mom, searching her face for denial, for some shred of compassion. But all I saw was rage. Rage at being exposed, at losing control. You never should have told her, she hissed at my father, her mask cracking completely. Then her eyes shifted to me, cold and sharp. Yes, it's true. You weren't his. You were a mistake I had to live with. Do you think I enjoyed it? Watching you grow up with his eyes searching for himself in you when I knew you didn't belong to him? You were a punishment, Daniela, a constant stain I couldn't erase. Her words were daggers, every syllable slicing through me. A punishment, a stain. I felt the ground tilt beneath me, the years of doubt and self-loathing crystallizing into one horrific truth. It hadn't just been favoritism. It had been resentment. Hatred. Clarissa's mouth hung open, her perfect composure gone. She looked between Mom and me as if seeing us both for the first time. Mom, how could you? But Mom silenced her with a glare. Don't you dare judge me. Everything I did was to protect this family, to keep up appearances. You think anyone would have respected us if they knew? I stood slowly, my legs trembling, but fueled by something far stronger than shock. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. I was the scapegoat for her guilt, her living reminder of choices she couldn't face. For years, I had begged myself to believe I was simply not good enough. That maybe if I tried harder, I'd win her love. But now I saw the truth. It was never about me. It was about her shame, her sin. And she had buried me beneath it to keep her secret safe. I looked at her, my voice shaking but resolute. You spent 36 years convincing me I was unworthy, that I was less than my sister. But the truth is, I was never the broken one. You were. You carried your guilt, and you made me pay for it. You destroyed me to protect yourself. Her face twisted, fury and fear battling inside her. You don't understand. No, I said firmly, cutting her off. I finally do. The table was silent except for the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. My father wept quietly. My cousins whispered to one another. And Clarissa sat frozen, staring at me with something I couldn't name, pity maybe, or regret. And me? I felt hollow and yet strangely light. The truth was shattering, yes. It gutted me, but it also freed me. Because finally, after all these years, I knew it had never been my fault. I had never been the unworthy one. I turned, walking away from the table, from the stairs, from the wreckage of a family built on lies. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away in defeat. I was walking away in power. But as I stepped out into the evening air, one thought echoed in my mind. The truth had been spoken, but healing was a different battle altogether. The night air wrapped around me like a cold blanket as I stepped away from the chaos of that table. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them against my sides just to steady myself. The murmurs of my relatives carried faintly behind me, but I didn't turn back. For once, I didn't need their approval, their validation, or even their understanding. I sat down on the edge of the porch, staring out at the glow of the barbecue lights. My whole body trembled with the enormity of what had just been revealed. For 36 years, I had lived beneath the weight of my mother's disdain, thinking it was my flaw, my failure, my weakness. And now, in one brutal confession, I learned it had never been about me at all. I was simply the scapegoat for a secret she couldn't bear to face. And yet, knowing the truth didn't erase the scars. If anything, it deepened them. The years of loneliness, of self-hatred, of letting others mistreat me because I thought I didn't deserve more, they weren't undone by the revelation. They were carved into me, permanent. I heard footsteps behind me. For a moment, I thought it would be Mom, ready to drag me back inside, to twist the truth into something that suited her. But it wasn't. It was Clarissa. She stood a few feet away, uncertain, her usual confidence stripped away. For once, she looked human. "Daniela," she said softly, almost as if testing the name. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of her silence all these years pressed against me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of her silence all these years pressed against me. She had seen it too. Maybe not the affair, but the way Mom treated me. She had benefited from it. "I didn't know," she said finally, her voice trembling. About any of it. I just thought Mom was hard on you because you were different. She stopped, looking away. "I should have realized. I should have stood up for you." Her words landed somewhere between apology and confession, but I couldn't let them soothe me. "You didn't want to realize," I said quietly. "You liked being the favorite. You liked having her love, even if it meant I had none." Tears filled her eyes. I was selfish. I thought if I questioned it, I'd lose her too. I turned to face her fully, for the first time without flinching, without shrinking. "You already did lose her. Neither of us ever had her. Not really." She loved herself more than she ever loved either of us. We sat there in silence, the truth heavy between us. For the first time, Clarissa didn't have a comeback. She just nodded, her tears glistening in the porch light. Inside, I could still hear the rumble of voices, my mother no doubt spinning her story, trying to claw back control. But it didn't matter anymore. Something irreversible had happened that night. The truth was out. The mask was broken. And yet, as much as I wanted to walk away forever, a part of me still ached. Not for her, for me, for the little girl who had spent her childhood waiting for a mother's love that never came. For the teenager who thought she had to be perfect to be seen. For the woman who carried those wounds into every corner of her life. I stood slowly, brushing away my tears. Clarissa rose too, but I didn't wait for her. I walked to my car, my footsteps steady despite the storm inside me. When I closed the door behind me, I felt something shift, an invisible tether snapping. I wasn't free yet. Healing would take years, maybe a lifetime, but I was no longer chained to her lie. In the days that followed, the fallout rippled through the family. Some relatives reached out quietly, offering words of support, admitting they had seen things too but had never wanted to get involved. Others avoided me, clinging to Mom's version of the story. And Mom herself, she never called. Not once. But my father did. One evening, he showed up at my apartment, looking older and smaller than ever. He sat at my kitchen table, his hands trembling as he held his coffee. "I failed you," he said simply. "I let her hurt you because I was too afraid to lose her. And in doing so, I lost you instead. I don't know if you can forgive me, Daniela, but I want to try. I want to know you, not as her shadow, not as her shame, as my daughter." Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness wasn't simple. It wasn't something I could hand out in a moment. But hearing him admit it, hearing him name what he had done, it mattered. It cracked open a door I hadn't realized I wanted open. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said honestly. "But if you really want to know me, you can start by showing up now. Not for her, for me." He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. For the first time, I saw him not as the silent accomplice, but as a broken man trying, maybe too late, but trying. And as I sat there, I realized something profound. Revenge hadn't come from hurting them back, or from exposing them to the family. The real revenge, the real justice, was reclaiming myself, refusing to be defined by her cruelty or her secrets, speaking my truth out loud, and standing in it, even if my voice shook. Because in the end, I wasn't my mother's shame. I wasn't her mistake. I was Daniela. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. If you've ever lived in someone else's shadow, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, I hope my story reminds you of this. You don't need their approval to shine. You don't need their love to be worthy. Sometimes, standing up for yourself is the most powerful act of love you'll ever give. Not to them, but to yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and truth. And if you've ever had to stand up to family betrayal, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Together, we can turn our pain into power. At my parents' 30th anniversary, a hidden family secret is revealed that shocks me and my daughter Sophie. A photograph and long-buried betrayals exposed the truth behind the life I thought I knew. I must face reality, protect the truth, and safeguard my daughter's future.